many of the people who were involved in the conversations that we're going to be talking about in this session are actually in today's session, so we can get lots of different perspectives on the work that we've been doing. So I want to kind of the central theme that this conversation today is built around is the idea of essence. And so rather than talking about it, I want to invite everyone to have a conversation around their experience of it. So I'm going to give you a very simple exercise to do, and we're going to this is like a little wake up. We're going to launch immediately into having conversations with one another around a question, or a little exercise. So what I'd like you to do is think of someone who you know very well. Okay? So think of someone who you know very well, and I'm going to ask you to describe them to your partner or partners in a particular way. I want you to describe their essence, not their behaviors, not their personality, not their history, not their talents, not what they do, but their essence. So look behind all of those surface phenomena to get at what is the core pattern that makes this person who they are, unique in the world. And we'll have 15 minutes for this, so hopefully more than one person will be able to work on trying to describe someone that they know and care about in terms of their essence. Okay, so have fun with this. Heather, let's go ahead and send everyone out. You probably all know that you need to accept. So there'll be a little button that comes up where you accept going into the chat room.
So we both picked our mothers, and that was really interesting because one of us, the mother, is still alive, and for me, she's passed. And I would like to say that for me, what I recognized right away was that her essence became much more available to me after she left her personality, if that makes sense. After she left her body, I became much more in touch with the essence of the woman who raised me, of my mama. So that's what I wanted to share.
Nice, thanks. Anyone else? Yes, Deke.
Well, we found that we had to talk around it, that we had to talk of things that were not essence, and then our partner would sort of challenge that. And that, I think that challenging was what enabled me to get somewhere with it.
So you found yourself starting with something that was a little superficial and then dropping down layer by layer. Yeah, great. That's often what it takes.
But only with the partner's help.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else? Yeah, Palace.
It's always me, huh? So Sadiq and I and Anna came in as partners, and towards the end, I thought, is this a trick? Is this a trick exercise? Is there only one right answer? And what we discovered in our journey in a short time is that it's the distinctions between behaviors, between a behavior and essence. The conversation got to a very refined level. How do you distinguish between behavior and an essence? So the one size fits all answer I felt was love, even though it sounds like a cliche, but yeah.
Yeah, that's almost like trying to get at what's the essence of being human, say. Whereas then, and we're all human, of course, but we're also each of us ourselves. And what is the essence of that distinctive being is what what you've opened up actually is quite wonderful, because first of all, there is no right answer. There's only the inquiry and the discovery and the discernment that you guys were talking about. And yet, making that effort to try and get at what is the essence of something and not just sort of like the habits or, you know, the current reactivity or the whatever, is the basis for the work that I do, at least. It's like, can I discover something true about what I'm working on that I can call forward, that I can ground myself in and work with that, instead of all of the issues, problems, behaviors, personality, and other stuff that gets layered on top of every living thing. Yeah, Susan.
We had the presence of a fourth person, an infant. And I found that to be very interesting because I said, oh, here, I wonder what the essence of this person is. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm a Buddhist, so I thought, like, you know what, essence really sort of brings to me is like what we brought along with us this time. And we find that out sometimes very early on, and sometimes we never figure it out. You know, each person is different, very different that way. Some people really know what they're about when they're out. Some don't. But I was thinking about my mom, and she always had a very clear sense of herself, and I always felt that she knew about.
Okay. Thank you. Well, so thanks everyone for playing. This kind of sets the ground for what I wanted to do, which is to share with you a little bit about some work that a whole group of Lama beings has been engaged with over the last, I've lost track, maybe 3 years. And this is work that got started by the trustees and then started to extend out, and invited the trustee group invited the residents in, and Lama Council and various continuing members, and it's just become a kind of ongoing and really enlivening conversation and exploration over time. And one of the things that we have been exploring is, how do we tap into the essence of Lama and then work with Lama based on its essence? Not necessarily based on its history or its habits, but its essence. So that's why I wanted to start from here, because I want to introduce a little bit of that work, but I wanted it to be not like this concept, right? But something that we actually have a feel for. And each of us in our own way does have a feel for the essence of Lama. We have a connection to it and a relationship to it. But we may never have tried to articulate what that thing is that we have a relationship to. And so I wanted to share with you what this group came up with as an articulation. And of course, this is not the one right answer. In fact, it's not even more than like a first draft, but it's a kind of starting point for an ongoing, I don't know, conversation or exploration into who is this being called Lama that we all relate to, are in relationship to, and in a sense live within. So that's what I want to share with you. I'm just going to check on my notes here. Oh, I wanted to say a couple things about what led to us exploring that. We started out, before we got to this question of essence, the first thing we needed to do was to try and be able to hold in our minds an image of Lama as a living being. By the way, pause for a second. I'm going to have a very hard time seeing everybody on the screen. So if somebody has a question or a reflection or feel like they need to jump in, I won't be able to see you and call on you necessarily. So please put a little note in the chat box and Leslie will catch that. Okay, so I don't mean to stand here and lecture. If there's stuff that's really being stirred up or that you want to comment on, please jump in. And Leslie will let me know if someone has put a note in the chat box. Okay, so the first thing we set out to do was to be able to image in our minds Lama as a whole. And one of the things that came from that was the recognition that Lama is not just the mountain, right, and the foundation, and it's not just the resonant body. Lama is basically everyone who has ever lived on Lama Mountain and everyone who has been passed through Lama and has been transformed by that experience, which means that Lama is quite large. And not only is Lama large, but Lama has an extended influence in the world, an influence that's mostly invisible to us. But this transformational process that probably most or all of us have experienced in our relationship with Lama has had an effect in the lives we've led, the work that we've done, and the impact that we have in the world. So what we did in that conversation was begin to get this image of Lama as this very large, slightly amorphous, very hard to keep track of force for, let's say, the awakening of consciousness in the world. So that was the first piece of work that we did. And then that allowed us to be thinking about the different bodies within Lama. Lama is made up, of course, of the resident community. It's made up of the continuing members. It's made up of the trustees, Lama Council, the teachers who come through Lama, and so on. There are all of these different groups that are part of that body. And to greater or lesser extent, those groups have different roles to play within the whole of Lama, and they make different kinds of contributions to the whole of Lama. So we began to get this image of Lama as a living system made up of these different actors who are interacting with one another in ways that create the life of the whole. And this was quite exciting and energizing because it began to create new paths of relationship among those different actors.
Ben?
Yes.
Sorry about the echo. Loretta wanted to say something.
Great, thanks, Leslie. Loretta, please, jump in and don't forget to unmute yourself.
I didn't mean to interrupt you by any means, Ben, but I recognize the importance of essence. I think in my relationships, I don't pay attention to essence until later on, which kind of appears to filter to the value systems. You know what I mean? They are connected, but we just can't really name them in the beginning. But the essence tells us a lot. Doesn't tell us everything, but it tells us a lot. And I don't think I've always paid attention to the essence. I've waited too long, and then, it didn't work out because the value systems were not compatible. So.
Great. That was actually entirely relevant because that's kind of where I'm going in sort of painting this picture. That essence ended up being something that allowed us to see what brought coherence to that big entity that we call Lama. The essence is what allowed us to see the potential in the relationships among the different bodies of Lama. And that finally, essence, I'm maybe overstating the use of the word essence, but this kind of sense of a core that makes something what it is, that essence also helps us understand what Lama is bringing into the world, what it has to offer in the world. And so that's one of the reasons, you know, our desire to bring all of those things together is one of the reasons we dived into this exploration of the essence of Lama. And then from that, we began to generate insights about what Lama could be doing, what Lama's work might be in the world at this time in history, and so on. I'll share a little bit with you about that in a little bit. Okay, so that was a long-winded setup to share with you a little bit of the work that we did. And what I'm going to do now, hopefully I have the rights to share screen. Check here. Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to share with you, first of all, a framework that I use, that I learned in my work in Regenesis for thinking about essence. And this was the framework that we used for our work as a group. Yikes, I can't even find where it is on my screen. Can you guys see it?
We can only see the very tip top of the slide. If you hit escape, that might help.
There it is.
That's better.
Okay, there it is. Now, hopefully everybody can see that. Okay, so this is I don't want to go into a huge explanation of this. You'll see what we did with it in just a moment, but this is the underlying structure for our thinking. We were trying to understand, what is the core process of Lama? What is its characteristic way of processing everything? What's that core purpose that it always seems to be directed toward? And what value does that get created in the world because of the way Lama works and the purpose it seems to be pursuing? So this was the structure of the engagement that we undertook. Now I want to share with you what the results of that were. And some of you may have seen this, actually. I think the trustees and resident body have shared this a little bit around. Okay. So the first thing that we worked on was the core process. And the way we did this, by the way, is probably similar to the way that you guys were working in your little breakout groups. We told little stories. You know, what was it like to experience being in Lama, and what was the process like? And what we came to as a distillation of those stories is that the process is a lot about demanding wholeness. Lama demands that we bring the whole of ourselves to everything that we do. And it demands that we become whole, which is another way of saying it demands that we heal ourselves so that we can be whole people. And it does this for us as individuals, and it does this for us as a community. And I love the word demanding, because Lama can be very gentle and Lama can be ruthless. And probably most of us have some experience of both. So this was our attempt to capture what is that processing that goes on at Lama, this demand for wholeness in our vision and in ourselves. I'm going to give you guys, by the way, a chance to work with this a little bit, and but let me just share with you the work that the group did first. Slide 3. Sorry, my computer is completely overwhelmed by all the slides I have open. Okay, hopefully you can see that one. So the second thing we worked on, we called core purpose. It's like an orientation that this living entity always seems to be directed toward. And again, after sort of listening to all of the stories, we sort of extracted from it this statement that the purpose is sourcing seva. And partly this means finding the seva in ourselves, right? finding the will and the commitment to serve, and uncovering that and really developing it. But the other half of this is that that seva becomes a source, right? That seva becomes a source of energy and becomes a source of our spiritual development, and our ability to grow and enlarge and become, fulfill our potential in community and in the world. So that's how we tried to capture that idea. We called it sourcing seva. Yeah, Leslie? Can't hear you, Leslie.
For those who don't, I mean, probably everyone does, but maybe not, if who don't understand what seva means, could you talk a bit about what seva means?
I will say my very limited understanding. Actually, Leslie, would you share with us your understanding of it? I think that's likely to be more.
Well, I
meaningful.
think of it mainly as service, and service as a practice, as a so not just a thing you do, but a way of being.
Yeah, that's kind of how I understand too. And I also think of it as an instrument. It's a spiritual practice, right? It's an instrument for my own growth and development. That I engage in seva, in selfless, unconditional service as a way of becoming more of what I have the potential to become, something like that. Does that resonate? Yeah, okay. I'm sure each of us probably has our own definition of it, and some of them are probably more precise than others.
So Ravi and Heather both had things they wanted to say. Ravi?
Great, Ravi, jump in.
Hello, Ben. Thanks for coming. Just adding to what you said, I experience seva like there's no expectation of reward or acknowledgement. So it's inner source for the inner source as opposed to recognition in the larger parameter.
Great, thank you. And Heather?
Yeah.
I just posted the definition from the wiki. That's all.
Great. Good. So what's interesting is if this really is part of the essence of Lama, chances are everyone on this call has some fairly profound relationship of their own to this idea of seva, because it's almost impossible to avoid living in and with this whole process of Lama. Okay, so let me share with you the third term on our framework, and then I'm going to turn you loose to play with it a little bit. Let's see if I can find my next slide. Okay, so the third term is core value. And meaning, so if I've kind of invested myself into this process of having wholeness grown, demanded of me and being grown in me, and really tapping into seva as a source for my own development and finding that capacity for selfless service in myself, what's the value that gets created in my life and gets created in my world because of that? And what we came to was concentrating and magnifying essence. That this is one of the things that Lama produces, is the concentration and magnification of essence. Okay? So let me leave this up for just a second. For those of you who have, who are good at doing screenshots, you might want to take a screenshot of this, because I'm going to have you go and play with these terms in breakout groups. And if you're not good at that, you can just write it down on a piece of paper. You know, write these three terms: demanding wholeness, sourcing seva, concentrating and magnifying essence. Okay, I'm going to assume everybody has it, and I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so Heather, just, yeah. Did somebody have something to say?
Yeah,
Varda.
yeah.
Hi, Bart.
Hi. I get what the third one is as far as value, but in a sort of a funny way. Usually, you don't use the same term to define something. So to define essence by using the word essence in that third category is a little boggling for me.
Good. Yes, I knew someone was going to bring that up. And that could either be because that really is the value that Lama produces, or it could be we got a little lazy and we didn't drive our thinking deep enough, right? And so as you play with this in this little breakout, I invite you to, actually, let me tell you what the breakout is. And through doing this exercise, you may end up coming up with a more refined statement for one or more of these. And that's great. I mean, this needs to be constantly brought back to life and given meaning, okay? So the exercise is quite simple. It's have talk with the people in your group. And this will be groups of 3, Heather. And if there's any way to not put me in, that would be great, because it just automatically sends me in. So just have a conversation about where you experience these patterns showing up in your life with Lama. Yeah. And you might have experienced all of them. You might have experienced none of them. But just have that, tell little stories about what does this actually look like in reality? Where did it show up in my life and in my experience? Where maybe is it still showing up today in my life and in my experience? Okay? And we'll do this. We have another 15 minutes for this one. And you saw how it works. Heather will give you a little note halfway along to let you know how much time you have, and then she'll bring you back to the main room. Okay, away you go. Have fun with this, and I'm looking forward to hearing some reflections on what you got from that. Well, we're running low on time, and I want to introduce one more little piece, and then kind of open it up for conversation, and we'll end at quarter to the hour, but we're going to leave the room open. So if anybody feels like they want to stay after and linger and keep talking about this stuff, we'll have another 15 minutes to just keep talking. So if anybody wants to stay on a little later, feel free. Okay, so hopefully that was interesting and useful and yielded some insights. And what I want to do is share with you one more piece of work that we did based on playing with this idea of the essence of Lama. As a group, and at this point, we'd sort of brought in all kinds of people into the conversation. And we were trying to think about, okay, if that's our essence, right? And if there are certain things we really care about as a community, and if we look out at the world and see all of the changes happening, this, mind you, was in the fall, before all of the craziness around the virus and so on happened. But we could feel that there's a lot of change going on, a lot of kind of disruption in the world. Then what do we want to pursue as our collective direction? And we came up, out of that conversation, we came up with a statement that I want to share with you. That is kind of the way that this essence, our picture was, this is the way this essence plays out in the world at this time. Okay? So let me share my screen. So here again, you can see the essence, and this is the statement of proposed direction. I'm going to read it out loud. Preparing individuals and communities to respond consciously and creatively to profound disruptive change. Preparing individuals and communities to respond consciously and creatively to profound disruptive change. And
Not too prophetic.
I'm sorry?
I said not too prophetic.
No, not too prophetic. Right on the mark, though.
Pressing.
You know, one of the funny things, just in terms of my own personal history and the history of a number of people who are here today, that this, you know, we lived through the fire, right? Preparing ourselves to go through profound disruptive change and doing our best to do that consciously and creatively is something that was done in a really big dramatic way during the fire. But if you look at the pattern of Lama, it's always happening, right? We're always burning in the fire of Lama. So at any rate, I'll say it, read it one more time, then I'm going to take it down. Preparing individuals and communities to respond consciously and creatively to profound disruptive change. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just open the floor and, you know, let people sort of reflect on, okay, what was this like? You know, what's being stirred up in me? What's being stimulated? What am I seeing that maybe I hadn't seen before we had this conversation? Let's just sort of collect reflections from the group. I see that Robbie has his hand. I'm going to let Leslie call on people.
Okay, so Robbie?
I really appreciate the focus on essence around Lama. And I began to get a stream of things. It's a place, it's a culture. But I think the one that surprised me the most that I wanted to share with the group is that Lama Foundation feels to me like a state of mind, a consciousness that feels present now in everything that I do. And I have had laughter and tears in all my years at Lama, and feel so grateful for being able to cook in the oven, but that it's my state of mind has been affected by it is what stops me in the tracks.
So, Thomas.
Speaking about how things were sort of sensed earlier, how this came out from autumn, I believe. Of course, I work with each circle each winter, and this was the first circle ever since 1996 that actually had all the essential components to develop their relationships, communicate, and build their alignment. And I didn't have to do hardly anything. And that was stunning for all of us to realize. And what it led to was, I wonder what's coming. If this is how you're prepared, something's on the horizon. And so for me, it's like there's something very beautiful in that timing and in that preparation of people. So that's it.
So Varda.
Okay, hi. Well, in terms of this business of demanding wholeness, I was remembering some of the more difficult times that I had when I was living in the community, and being confronted in various ways. And I remembered, there's the Sufi story of the grain of sand that creates the pearl. So basically the irritating factor is what one has to come to terms with and integrate in order to be able to have that pearl develop. So the inner space in one's own beingness of being willing to, kind of like Hanuman ripping open the heart, being willing to see irritating factors as useful, even the judgments of others as useful, and being willing to take on a transformative growth from that is part of how I feel like I have to relate to that concept of demanding wholeness. And I also started remembering the Gurdjieff and Bennett work. Mr. Bennett talked about community, and basically the community itself is the irritating factor. and that we find that in relationship, but we don't always deal with it consciously. And certainly in the late 70s and early 80s, it was not as worked out as clearly. And I think it's much more clearly understood and handled in a more accepting way, rather than making each other wrong and then being upset. But to actually consciously understand the community as an irritating factor and how we relate to that, to accept that transformatively for our own growth, is kind of what I was seeing as part of this discussion.
So we have two more people that wanted to talk, Susan and then Tim. It's 2 minutes to 1:45, but we're okay. Those who want to stay on a bit can do that. Yes?
I was going to say, this is when we agreed to end. So if anyone feels like they need to get on with their day and drop off, please feel free. But we're going to leave the room open for exactly this kind of thing, sharing insights and reflections for another 15 minutes. Okay.
Does that resonate, what I said, with you, Ben?
I'm sorry?
I'm interested to know how that resonated with you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind by that phrase. It's like, yeah, well, it's the best way I can imagine having to make myself whole. And it's not, I mean, so many of us know it can be intensely painful, but it's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
So Susan?
Yeah, I'll try to be really brief so lots of people can talk. I feel that my life has been totally serendipitous in some way, because I feel like I was in the place not knowing why I was there until I was there, and then I knew. And I think I would guess almost every single person here has had that same experience. And I feel like that's part of why we ended up at Mama, is we were born to do this work. And it is magic as far as I can tell. I don't think there's, you can just decide to do this. It happens. But I think I would like to, I'm going to listen to Thomas's circles thing, because in November, I decided at 73, I would start remonetizing coaching on resilience, on making big changes and seeing them as the path. And sure enough, it showed up. Lots of people are right there now who were totally ignoring that piece of their lives. And here we are we were so blessed to have the opportunity through Lama, through whatever situation you found yourself in that brought you to this path. So I just want to say thank you to everyone I wish I could really spend a whole long time with each one of you, because it's just such a joy to know my child.
So Tim and then Anat.
Hey everybody. I also wanted to just take this opportunity to say hi to so many beautiful faces that I haven't seen in a long time, and all on one screen. Wow. I just had a clarifying, I was just curious, is this triad, and also kind of going off what Thomas said, I think the last bylaws were 1996. So I'm curious if this is trying to form new ones, or if it's if it has a specific purpose beyond, maybe a more practical one. I don't know.
Well, let me give you a very quick answer from my point of view, and then maybe Miriam or someone from the trustees wants to speak to it. But from my point of view, what we're trying to do is find a language that allows us to go deep in terms of our understanding about what this phenomenon of Lama is, right? And the role it could play in the world. And then from that, whatever you need to take on, whether it's dealing with, financial issues or fundraising, for example, or rewriting bylaws or reorganizing something. For example, the resident bodies had to really significantly reorganize itself around COVID and the summer, right? And so they've actually drawn on this imagery and this language to help them think about it. So that's my purpose here, is to provide that deep basis from which the community can choose to do whatever it feels it needs to do. Miriam or someone from the Board of Trustees, would you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so, Ben. That was well put. I mean, I don't envision changing bylaws at this point. It's more in terms of, how we manifest ourselves, and, all of our working relationships, there's different circles. So it's not really about making that kind of structural change, at least at this point. It's not the intention.
So Anat, and then Loretta had a question.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to share that when I was thinking about the essence of Lama, I was thinking about meeting of the ways. And when I'm thinking of meeting of the ways, I'm not just thinking of the different spiritual ways, that too, but the way of every moment and the way of every way that I show up. So the meeting of the way, there is a community that's meeting different spiritual tradition. There is a meeting of the way of how it's actually functioning every day. And the meeting of all the ways that I am, so that when I come there, I meet myself as a meeting of the way. And I'm up against the service consciousness, the Seva consciousness of Lama demands of me to notice how I'm showing up, and to mirror for myself all of the ways that I am, and what service means to me in this moment by moment. And so the meeting of the way really captures, even in this moment, how are we meeting the way of COVID? How are we meeting the way of racial integration in this world right now? So that sort of really encompasses to me how I experience it when I'm there, both spiritually in a very personal way, and a very also a way of relating to this moment in the world. That's it.
So Loretta, you had a question. You have to turn your sound on, Loretta, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, my question is, do you need to have Siva as one thing, or is it okay, or do you need to search for it? Does it come to you what your service is, your purpose is, or as life, whatever life brings you, you meet the need and are in service with that particular situation, if that makes any sense?
I'd like to this is Varda, I'd just like to say, Ram Dass's book, How Can I Help, can be a Bible for this question.
Okay. Do you have a short answer to that, or?
Everything. Once you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and the heart, everything is service.
So you just meet the need as it comes.
Right.
Right. Okay. That's kind of what my question is.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes my own experience is that sometimes I'm handed circumstances because I'm prepared to be someone who will hear the need that's in front of me that other people might not have noticed, because I've trained myself and I've opened my willingness to be someone who will be capable of responding. If it's a beggar on the street corner, or I worked as a substitute teacher in the schools, with kids having issues, whatever it is, you can listen for the essence of what the situation is and respond to it, rather than being put off by reactivity to, the appearances.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
But How Can I Help? It's a really great book.
Okay. How can I help? Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I think Ram Dass's other book was Compassion in Action.
This is Irit. When we did the triangle this time, and I came for yet again the same question as Varda, how is concentrating and magnifying the essence can be part of the core value if essence is what we are looking at to start with? And for today, I would change the core value to the awakening of consciousness, so that the mending wholeness as a core process and sourcing seva as a core purpose is the essence of it is waking up, the awakening of consciousness.
I sort of agree, because Tim and I were talking about that earlier. For some reason, I would love to see a word awareness in it, in the triad. And it would come in the core process, I think. And then the core value would include the wholeness, everything. It's healing, it's essence, it's awareness.
And it also came to me because the awakening of consciousness is in the phrases of the official mission statement of Lama.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
So I just want to, Asha is waiting to say something, and we've got sadly 4 minutes, and I can see that we could be here for a long time and many times. It's so juicy. And I just want to acknowledge that and give Asha a turn so we can finish it up and maybe agree, maybe we'll do this again.
That would be great, and I'll try to be brief. So I just wanted to share that when I came to Lama, I thought it was to awaken my consciousness. That's what I thought, but I didn't know what that meant. Many years later, I was able to hear the call to service when it came and answer it. And even though I've told many, many people that my experience at the Lama Foundation helped give me the foundation that I needed to be able to do that in such a wonderfully, in a way that has been so fulfilling for me, I still thought it's only about me and I was the only one. Like that was my experience. I came to a place of service eventually because of my time at Lama. And now I hear you saying, oh, that's kind of the Lama experience. So that is very cool, and thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for sort of joining in with us. This is exactly what I had hoped to accomplish, was kind of to open it up and give a little taste of where we've been hanging out and thinking and working together over the last couple of years. And it's just a joy to get everybody else's sort of voices into it. And yes, I hope these kinds of conversations, I hope, will continue. I think it's a wonderful way to weave together all of our different experiences, all of the kind of life experience that we have to offer. And also, from my point of view, become increasingly conscious of the way that the work that we've done through Lama, that what we've learned through Lama, how that becomes a gift into the world, right? That it's through us that Lama has an effect in the world. And that's one of the things that I think we wanted to bring more conscious attention to. So I'm grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to you, Heather. Thank you for being our tech person. And thank you, Leslie, for keeping us, on track in terms of being able to speak. So.
Could I just jump in and say one thing?
Thanks very much, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for lighting up our network.
Yeah.
A pleasure. Bye, all. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, Ben. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.